right. Hey, guys, how are you? This is Brian with Good Shepherd Defense. I am here to my right. We have Steve and these two handsome gentlemen over on my left, your right, are our subject matter experts tonight. So thank you for joining us. We're going to be discussing with our two law enforcement officers tonight just a few common things that you should know as maybe a CCW holder or as an overall defensive mindset. This is our second live video with subject matter experts, so forgive us anything that we might miss or anything. We're imperfect, but we have had a lot of questions come through, and we only have 30 minutes. So we're going to kind of get through some of these questions. And the one thing is, please put some of your questions through. I'm going to be giving away one of these sweet, awesome LEO blue Good Shepherd shirts tonight for one of you guys who comment, like, or share, or ask a question on our live video tonight. But just to go ahead and kind of shake off some of the cobwebs, and we're all in front of a camera, I'll just start off with your name, all right, and then where you work, and then what you carry off duty and where you carry, all right?
Dan Glover. I carry a 9mm Glock 43. I always carry it on the side because I'm law enforcement, so I've been training for years to draw from the side. I'm right-handed, so it's always on my right side usually. I work for Tazewell County Sheriff's Office. I have 21 years in this month.
Got it.
Justin Ray, Beacon Police Department. Multiple guns that I carry, just depending. I carry a Bodyguard 380, and then I also carry a Shield 45. Typically, sometimes appendix or on the hip, just depends the climate, what you're wearing, type thing.
Okay. Steve, what do you carry?
XDS, just the original one, not the Mod 2. Looking to switch over to that pretty soon, though.
All right. And where do you carry on your body?
Typically, like on my 5. So that way I can get to my left arm if I can't get to it with my right.
Okay. And now we all know what they carry and where, and I'm not sharing my secret. So actually, I carry the 365, P365, and I carry appendix. So anyways, just kind of break some of the ice. So it's pretty informal, guys, but we're going to go ahead and roll through our first question that we had before. Hopefully you guys can see the screen. But the first one that we had, and we get this a lot, is if a person has a CCW and they defend themselves and it's ruled justified, how long before they would get their firearm back? Or we can even go into if anyone uses their firearm in self-defense. What's a typical process in terms of, obviously a crime's been committed and that's probably considered evidence. So what are you guys thinking? What's going on?
So you're going to have a lot of different aspects to it. So first off, your gun is going to be taken. It's going to go to the Illinois State Police for the crime lab. They're going to do their stuff. Then you have to look at the whole process of it, of whether with the courts, they're going to have a time frame that they're going to have before they'll even consider releasing it. I don't know the exact, each county could be different. So I can't give a specific answer, but so first you got to get to the state police before they release it. Then you have to have the courts release it as well.
Right.
Mainly, like you said there, it says justified. So depending on if it's justified, unjustified, could keep the times longer. State police, it could be months, could be 6 months, 7 months, 8 months. I don't know. It all comes down to circumstances of whatever the incident occurred, where it was there multiple shooters, anything else like that.
Right. So now we heard the term justified. So this is obviously after the fact that our biggest thing, as instructors, we're always telling students, and you guys as well, telling citizens that we want to make sure that we're only shooting to make sure that we're stopping a threat. We want to make sure we're not committing murder. There's a lot of the different things that have to add up for us to be able to consider this justified. So as you guys are coming to a scene, all right, so you guys get a report of shots fired. And we try and keep it real with our students to let them know the process of what happens, whether they're the one that calls 911 or a witness calls 911, goes to the dispatcher, which goes to you guys. So you guys could be getting it third hand. So as you guys are coming onto a scene, I mean, this doesn't have to be a firearm or shots fired, but on any scene, But for this specific reason, what are you guys thinking? What's your thought process as you would roll on a scene, and what are you looking for? If I'm the CCW shooter in that instance, and I hear the sirens or I see the cherries and berries, right? What am I looking for, or what are you looking for? I'm sorry.
Number one, it comes down to what we get through dispatch, what kind of information we get. We're going to want to know what you're wearing, who you are, because if we show up on scene and we see, oh, he's got tattoos, blue shirt, bald, okay, this is probably
and handsome.
Yes, of course. This is the guy that has just been involved in shooting, for one. Number two, I already have an inkling of, okay, he's the guy calling in. He's the one that was involved in the incident. He's a concealed carry holder, so he will have a firearm on him somewhere. We're going to secure the firearm from you as part of the scene and investigation, and as we get there. Always keep in mind, though, a lot of times the information is relayed third party. We don't get all the right information all the time, so you got to kind of make sure we know who you are when we get there. Hands up, make sure we can see your hands, whole body hands, same thing. Everybody's the same to us. So whole body hands is what we're looking for. So we want to make sure we don't have anything in our hands. You don't want to have your firearm in your hand, whatever. Secure it in your car or on your person if you have a holster or whatever.
Right.
So that's the main things we're looking for.
Good. I like it.
Yeah, and we're going to be giving you orders too. So just comply with what you're being told. Like Dan said, we're going to treat everybody the same. So we because we really don't know. We don't, we're only relying on the information that's coming from our dispatch. So just when the officers get there, if they ask you to do something, just do it, because we need to make sure that everybody stays safe. The suspect, you, and the officers. So we want to take control of the scene, and then we'll go from there with the investigation.
Okay, good. And a lot of the stuff, it's I'm afraid to say, but sometimes it just comes down to just circumstantial, right? Mm-hmm. So seeing you guys starting to like the video, starting to send some comments and stuff in, and some questions, so keep them coming. All right. The next one that we kind of have is a lot of people have this mindset that, hey, I'm the good guy, right? Why should I be afraid of going to jail? I did the right thing. But sometimes what they just said before was they don't know the whole story. So that's number one. And we want to make sure that we are defending ourselves for the right reasons. So what are some wrong things that you would be going to jail for if you pulled your firearm out? There's a whole slew of those. So maybe some common, top 5, top 10 or something like that, yep, you're going to jail.
Always, number one, in concealed carry, you need to understand the laws and what you can and can't do, where you can and can't carry. You just need to understand that it's a split-second decision. So it's not like you're playing armchair quarterback and you can make a decision on what you're going to do or when you're going to do or how the situation is going to come about. It comes down to understanding the law, what you can and can't do, and stuff like that. That's the main thing. Going to jail, as I've always taught for a long time, is there's 3 things you got to worry about. Ethically, can you pull the trigger on someone if you had to in that situation? Criminally and civilly. So there's 3 different things you have to worry about outside of that.
Yeah, and it goes back to the first question: is your actions justified in what you did? So if you're in a situation where you think you should have drew your weapon, but you shouldn't have, those are all the things that you gotta think about. Is there something is there an imminent threat to yourself or others that's
great bodily harm or death? That's what the law states. So it's the same for us as it is anybody that's a concealed carry holder.
So you just gotta it's all circumstantial. So if there's something that's driving you to draw, if it's a point where you shouldn't, then you could be looking at like assault charges or something like that. Okay.
One comment real quick just says if we can increase our sound or whatever, they're not able to hear that very well. So sorry for that, guys. We'll go ahead and make sure we increase it. Still some stuff coming through. I know one thing that we talk about obviously as instructors, as we say, he said it himself, is protecting your body, yourself. And we always kind of say, protect yourself, not stuff, right? And that's just kind of one thing. And it's a big thing. It's like last case scenario, right? Do you have anything to add on that?
No, I did have kind of a follow-up question though. You guys were talking about the law. So for people watching, where would be a good place for them to find out more about that?
Right. Obviously.
Are there resources out
there? Are
there?
they wanting certain laws or
resources just so people know more?
You can
about
go
the law?
right to the Illinois compiled statutes online. So you
Okay.
can look up any law that you want through going through the state police's website and all those. The ILCS, if you want to know what aggravated assault is, and that'll tell you, the differences of how it can be done with firearms, stuff like that. If you go to the firearm statute, it'll break it down from there, each law and what it means and
Right.
what could happen on that.
Okay. Okay. So that's good. Still having issues with the volume or no? We're good to go? All right.
So one thing people should know too is just because somebody is arrested and they've been taken to jail, they have not been charged yet. That's completely up to the state's attorney in that county. So they're going to review the same exact stuff. So if they feel like it's not the proper charge, or they don't feel in that circumstance that they don't want to go through with it with charges, doesn't mean that the officer did anything wrong. It just means that they don't feel like it's enough for them to go through with the court procedures. So again, just remember, just because you're arrested, and we tell this to people all the time, you're just being charged with it. You haven't been convicted of it yet.
Okay, that's a good one. So moving on real quick on one of the other ones, we say, if I'm pulled over, should I tell an officer that I'm carrying? So a lot of people always, they're nervous when there's a traffic stop, even if they weren't doing anything wrong, which I'm sure there's a reason why they were pulled over in the first place. But they're nervous because there's a traffic stop. So as an officer, right? Someone pulls over, you pull somebody over. What happens there? What happens next?
Yeah. So typically when we make a stop, we're going to run the plate, which sometimes it'll come back with the driver, sometimes it doesn't. People need to understand that if the driver does come back, if you have a concealed carry, it will come back. So sometimes we already know prior to.
That's just if the vehicle's registered to them?
Correct.
Okay. All right. I've got a follow-up question after this one, so
okay.
Make sure.
So, when we approach the vehicle, as a courtesy, yeah, we appreciate it when people tell us. A lot of times we're going to have a follow-up question. Is it on your person or is it in the vehicle? If you say it's in the vehicle, don't be offended if we ask you to step out, because now we know that it's easier for us knowing that if it's not on your person, it's more of a safety issue for us than we know that.
I work out in the county, obviously, so a lot of times I don't have backup or someone close. Telling us that you have concealed carry is definitely a must, in my opinion. The reason being is, if you're going to tell us you have a firearm, you're not as big as a threat to us as someone who wouldn't tell us. Another thing you can do is you can always, when you hand your license, you also give your concealed carry. I don't remember if it's all one card now or two.
No, you still have a FOIA and a CCW. Okay.
So if you can hand your concealed carry with your license, that also lets us know, hey, and then we're going to ask you, do you have a firearm in the car? Is it on your person? And like Justin said, we might pull you out of the car. Don't be offended by that. We're just getting you away from a problem that, if the gun's in the glove box and you got to reach for your insurance card, stuff like that. That's what we're thinking. Center console, a lot of people will turn, and they'll turn in like this. So you'll see us move up on the front to look through the windshield. We're just making sure that there's no firearm or anything there. But the best thing you can do is tell us, let us know that you are concealed carry and you do have a loaded firearm.
Perfect. All right. So, one thing is we always try and say, honesty's key. How would you feel if you were the officer? You're just trying to do your job. You want to go up there, and obviously we want to be able to know of any potential threats that may or may not be there. As a law-abiding concealed carry permit holder who passed the criminal background checks, and you put your time in, and you carry legally, what's the circumstances why they pulled you over? Was it 3 o'clock on a Sunday afternoon and you just did a little stop and a roll through a red light? or is it 2 a.m. on a Saturday evening and you blew through a red light and you're crossing the lines, and what's the circumstances why, right? So always kind of make sure you put yourself in there. Another person just asked this, and that was my follow-up question. So what if I'm the spouse of the person who has a CCW, or one of my children who is legally able to drive and the car's registered? Do you think it would be helpful for parents to train anyone or kind of tell them the procedures of if they get pulled over, what to say, or like, hey, CCW might have popped up, but this is my dad's car? And is that something that you guys would see helpful or unnecessary?
Typically, we're going to ask because we're going to know who it is, because we're going to ask for identification. So a lot of times we already know what the name is, who's registered. So we'll the first thing we'll do is identify. So if I see that it's the same person, then I'm going to ask.
Okay.
If it's someone else, typically I don't ask. So that's going to be officer discretion at that time.
Got it.
Yeah, I would say, parents having a concealed carry or a wife in the car or wherever the gun may be, a lot of times you might want to let your teenager know, if the firearm is in the car and I fail to take it out of the car with me, this is where it would be. If you get pulled over, you might want to make sure that officer knows, my parents are concealed carry. They do sometimes carry guns, in the car, center console, in the glove box, or wherever it is. And that way the officer can be like, okay, might have you step out of the car. The officer might want to say, hey, do you mind if I just check to see if the firearm's there? Go ahead, you check, no firearm. Hey, have a seat back in the car. It's not in there. We're good.
Okay.
Yeah, and just be careful with that though, because if you have a child or a teenager or somebody and they don't have a FOID card, now most officers are probably going to do a follow up, just because if they see that the registered owner has a concealed carry, but the person in the car doesn't have anything, they may follow up with that. But again, that's officer discretion. So if it's in there and they don't have a FOID, technically they're in control of that vehicle, so they're responsible for everything in the vehicle.
Got it. And that's a key indicator. So is that also ammunition, right?
Yes.
So
anything.
Right. So you've got your car and you've got some ammo in the back in a range bag. You forget about it. You let your son or daughter drive, and they've got a broken taillight or whatever, and you find ammo in the back of the car. That's just that's something else that. I know it could be a ding. Obviously, officer discretion and stuff like that too. But still, you want to make sure you're mindful of that. So going through, we got a lot of people ask about printing, because the law is it's kind of it says partially or fully concealed, and that's one thing that we kind of go through. So a lot of that stuff is printing. And for those of you who don't know what printing is are you able to see basically the shape or the outline of the item through a fabric or like clothing? So for instance, your wallet, if you bend over, you see someone and you can see the outline of their wallet. That's a printing of the wallet. So for Illinois, people are wanting to know if I am able to see that is firearm. Okay. What is your circumstance on that? What do you guys think about that in terms of if you were to see that?
Number one, if you're going to be a concealed carry holder and you want to carry a firearm, most police officers are all for it. Printing, I think the way that they intended it was more of someone who reaches up to change a light bulb and you see maybe the bottom tip of the barrel, or you see the holster, or something to this fact. The problem is, someone who is concealed carry, you want it to be that way. You want it to be to where nobody knows you have it, because that gives you an ultimate advantage if there is an active shooter or something of that sort. So be mindful of what you wear. If you're going to carry an inside the pant holster, if you're going to carry an appendix, however you're going to carry it comes down to that also. What type of holster you have, how big is the pistol? Are you going to carry, a Glock 35 long slide 40 cal on your side? You're going to have a bigger chance of printing out onto your pants and everywhere else. Now, if you're carrying something smaller, like the Bodyguard or one of the ones that he was talking about, or a Glock 43, that's easier to conceal. So that's where it comes into play of what type of firearm you're going to carry, for one. Number two, how are you going to carry it? And also mindful of what type of clothing you're wearing, whether it's summer, winter, stuff like that.
Right. trying to kind of think also in terms of what he was backing off of. Nobody should really know that you're carrying, right? And that's the big thing. To include, hopefully, you know, if possible, friends, family. I mean, people say stupid things during the worst times. So, you know, you don't want to be, you know, at a restaurant or something, you're with a buddy and he knows you carry because you can't stop talking about it. And someone comes in there with a gun and they says, go ahead, Bob, go ahead and shoot him. You got a gun. So now you kind of put yourself in a bad spot. So concealed carry. And if you look up the definition of concealed, it's the intention to hide or not have it be known. So that's why it's concealed carry, right? These are good questions, guys. If you're just joining us, make sure you guys put some questions in. We've got 2 local law enforcement officers with us talking about concealed carry, defensive mindset, stuff like that. So please put those questions through, share the video. We're trying to reach and teach as many people as we can. So let's keep going on. Big one that everyone asks is, what happens if I ignore the no gun sign? I see the sign. I know it's there. And got a lot of people who come through these doors, all right, of the classroom, and they just hold up the Second Amendment and they say, this is my concealed carry license right here, right? And although we can't be really disinclined to agree or disagree, we're a nation of laws, and, you know, Illinois has got some laws, for better or for worse. And these gentlemen right here are here to uphold those laws, all right? So if I choose to ignore one of those signs, what's best and worst case scenario? What does that look like?
Yeah, so obviously if you're intentionally ignoring the sign, so there's a big word there, is intent. So based off the question, it's saying that they're just intentionally doing it. Then, you know, obviously you're breaking the law. So you're most likely, you know, going to be arrested if you're willingly doing it. Now, you go in some circumstances where maybe you didn't know that there was a sign or you just didn't happen to see it. Well, that's where that intent comes in. So most likely you're just going to be reminded about the sign or the laws. And, you know, some places, even if there is a sign or there isn't a sign, if you're at a private business and they ask you to leave, it's just like us. If we're in uniform going to lunch somewhere and they just don't want us there and they ask us to leave, you know, you gotta follow what they're asking you. But if there's a sign there and you're ignoring it, you know, you're subject to being arrested for that violation.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, it's most concealed carry people are going to abide by the laws because they don't want to lose that. So I mean, you're law-abiding citizens that believe in concealed carry and believe, as most police officers do, we want guys out there that concealed carry. So they're not going to put themselves in that situation. And if they do, then, you know, they can lose their concealed carry. They could be arrested. And, you know, they might not ever get it back.
Right.
Depending on what charges are filed.
Right. Yeah. So, So even if you're not arrested, we can still fill out a form, send it down to the state, and then so we would do a report. We would send the report to them with the form. And then the state could, even if you're not charged, the state could revoke that CCW license.
Right. So, I mean, it's always a gamble. So if you guys are choosing to not see that sign, it's difficult, right? A lot of people always say, what about, what if I'm in, let's say Kroger has no gun sign, which they don't. All right. But let's say that they do. And I ignore it. And I go in there and someone actually pulls a gun out somewhere and starts shooting. And I'm there. I have my concealed carry firearm, which it's illegal because I'm in a place of business that doesn't want it. And I use that to stop, to stop a threat. It's a difficult situation, right? I know that you guys aren't the prosecutors. You guys aren't, on that side of the law. But what's your general consensus on something like that?
So in that situation, what we could do is there's typically always an on-call prosecutor that we can get a hold of at the state's attorney. We can run the entire situation with them, and they can make that decision. Yes, go ahead and charge them with this, or no, just document it. We'll review it at a later time
Okay.
and go from there.
Okay. That's good. That's good to know. Right. Anything else on that? Perfect.
Got it.
All right. You got anything?
Nothing to add that one now.
Okay, perfect. So keep sending in your questions, guys. You guys are doing great. Got some good views and everything going on. But going on, we've got a big one, all right, to follow up with that question. So in the event of a mass shooting, what are my options and how can I distinguish myself as the good guy? So we got a lot of questions always like, well, what if I'm somewhere and I have to pull my gun out? We always want to make sure that we're 100% aware of our surroundings. We can't just focus and narrow in on that tunnel vision that ultimately you might get. There's a large percentage people do get. But always be mindful of your surroundings. You still have to make sure your head's on a swivel just because your threat's there. Perfect instance is when that one CCW permit holder in Walmart, he was a good Samaritan, went in there, 2 people went in and were shooting. He zeroed in on the one guy he saw as a threat, did not see his female accomplice behind him, and as this concealed carry permit holder went through to take down one of the threats, she shot him right in the back of the head. So in terms of that's one aspect, making sure that you're not situationally aware. The other aspect is Steve is in the mall with me, or I'm somebody else. I'm a concealed carry permit holder. Something happens, and Steve is another permit holder. What is the easiest way for us to distinguish amongst ourselves that we are the good guy? Whether an off-duty cop or an on-duty cop is arriving at the scene. There's a lot. That's a loaded question. So let's just kind of go ahead and just kind of, digest it one by one. So what's the easiest way to distinguish yourself as a good guy if there's an active shooting going on? Not a mass shooting, but an event where you have to use your firearm.
Number one, if you start having an active shooter incident, which I hope never happens around here, but it's starting to happen more and more everywhere, you're going to come across maybe off-duty officers. You're going to want to be able to tell them, hey, I'm concealed carry. If you're close enough and you do have an incident like you were talking about with the 2, I do remember the incident where that guy got shot in the back of the head by the female. The shooter will also have tunnel vision just like you will. If you don't train that, and you can't break it's 360, 540 battlefield, meaning head on a swivel just like you were talking about. He could also have tunnel vision, not paying attention to surroundings. Just like we were saying earlier, if the threat is taken care of or the concealed carry shooter takes the threat out, someone's going to be on the phone somewhere. You got to get all the information of what you're wearing, who you are, name, where you're at, stuff like that. That way, when the police come in, we know, okay, this is the guy that they're talking about. He was a concealed carry. He shot. If you have a holster your weapon. Keep your hands up because we're always going to be looking for whole body hands, just like we were talking about earlier. We react to everybody the same until we know who is exactly what and we're part of that incident.
Okay.
Just adding to that, if there's a situation where it's not secure, so we'll go through the situation where it was a single shooter type thing. If you're the shooter, you can call 911 yourself. That way you can give that information because we want a description. Because when we go in, it's a clean slate for us. We have no clue what's going on unless we're getting that information. So if you can call in, give the information, give what you're wearing, and then most likely our dispatcher is going to stay on the line because they're going to tell you exactly where we are so that we can get that communication there of knowing exactly where we need to go.
Right.
If it's still going on, the thing for us is if we're on scene, every shot, we're considering that's a life being taken. So we're going to be heading straight to the shots. So that's something that a CCW needs to be aware of because if we're just sprinting through, say, a mall or a big business, we're not doing this, real thorough search of the building. We're just going to the shots. So if we come into a room and you're there with a gun, we don't know if you're still the shooter. So at some point, if you can't take care of the situation, you may just have to holster, get yourself to a safe place. That way you're not putting yourself at risk of us thinking that you're the suspect that we're looking for.
Got it. Yeah, excellent information. That's a big one. So you guys have to be mindful of what happens when law enforcement actually arrives on scene. Take everything that you see in the movies and throw it out the window, right? That's a big one. So moving on, because we got some good stuff. So another one that we have is, so what else should I know or work on if I'm carrying a firearm every day? Usually one of the big things that we tell people, that when you take a class, especially for Illinois has one of the longest classes in the nation for concealed carry. But still, it's 16 hours of pretty much PowerPoint presentation and like 1 hour weapons handling. And that's pretty much it by design. So really, it's not sufficient enough to take and just say, in the real world, as soon as you take your class, you're ready to roll and you're ready to face every single threat available. Well, that's one thing. So there's a training aspect, but I mean, what else? What else would you tell citizens that here's some things that you need to know and work on?
I would say number one is mindset, and go back to the 365-40, meaning the complete battlefield, understanding backdrop and those things, because mindset's not really talked about with concealed carry.
Okay.
When I was teaching, I did talk a lot about mindset, and as you've been in one of our classes, Brian, with us, we always stress mindset and understanding what you should be doing, paying attention to. Practice drawing from wherever it is. Women carry the pistols in the purse. They need to practice drawing out of the purse. They need to, if you don't feel comfortable carrying an appendix style draw, or the side or whatever, you need to practice those things. You got to get out of the holster, because in that moment, if you don't consistently practice those skills, just like Justin and I, if we don't practice them, our skills will go down. We won't shoot as good. We won't be as, we might slam the trigger here or there when we first start shooting at the beginning of the year. They need to practice all those things and understand if there was an active shooter, what you should, if it becomes something that you can't control, like Justin was saying, maybe you need to holster it or move to a safer place and let the police come in and go ahead and deal with that.
Okay. Yeah.
So another thing he's already talked about, practicing drawing from the holster. But malfunctions are another thing that you need to work on. Can you manipulate a malfunction if you pull the trigger and you just get a click? Have you done it enough to where you can immediately go to the smack rack, pull the trigger? If nothing, then go through a double feed, locking the slide back, pulling the mag out, put a new one in. Those are things that you need to practice. That's where buying some of the dummy rounds so that you can set your own stuff up to practice. Practice. That's the number one thing that we can emphasize on anything, whether it be drawing or working on your malfunction drills, because it's the same stuff that we have to work on.
Yeah, definitely. So dry firing is a big one. Pulling from your holster is another one. I always like to tell people that it's not about how much you spent on your gun. It's about how much you've put into your training. So if you have a $250 high point, okay, I got it. It's a high point. There's only so much that I can perform, but you are also a tool. That's an extension of you. That's all it is. It's a tool. So if you're not a good contractor, but you have a really good name brand tool set, it doesn't make you a good contractor. You're still going to build a crappy project, whatever you're doing. So this is the thing. So a lot of people are like, well, I've got a really good firearm and I've got a holster that cost me $350, but that doesn't really necessarily mean anything if you don't practice at home. And too often we're teaching these people who come in after 5 years of concealed carry in Illinois and they're getting the renewals. They haven't shot their carry firearm in 5 years. That's crazy. And I get it. Life happens. That's a big one. But what's the reason why you are carrying in the first place? To defend yourself, to defend a loved one, right? So the big thing is, how much time are you putting into this to be able to save someone's life? And I always put a big A and a big L on the board. And I say you are either one or two of these things. You are either an asset or you're a liability. With your knowledge and your skill sets and your firearm, what you have right now, you're either one of those two things. And if you are a liability to yourself and others, you need to fix that. No one else can do that for you. So that's a huge one. That's a big one.
Stick to the basics. You don't have to go and run and jump and shoot and all that. Just keeping the gun, of drawing it, keeping your finger off the trigger till your sights are in your eyes, understanding. Like I draw my pistol before I go to work 10 times. every day. Every day I go to work, I draw it 10 times, make sure everything's working right, check the firearm, stuff like that.
Yeah.
Well, another thing that a lot of people don't think about is there's another aspect to any situation you go through, and that's stress. Once the stress kicks in, how are you going to react to that? That's where the muscle memory comes in, to where you've done it so many times that it's just a natural reaction at that point.
Yeah, that's a big one. So stress, everyone comes in at the range. It's an indoor range. It's climate controlled, and you get to shoot at a paper target 30 feet away, and you get to take 5 minutes for 5 shots. That's fantastic. But what really happens when someone's coming at you, when you're breathing, your breathing rate's up, your perspiration's up, your heart rate's up, you're tunnel visioned, have a malfunction, whatever. There's no pause button in life. Now go ahead, and what we've seen as well is that you have a 70% chance more of something happening after the sun sets. So at night, have you trained for it? Have you trained in low light situations? Well, if not, that's more often than not when it might happen. So make sure you put yourself in an area in a way that you are setting yourself up for success. So that's a big one. So we're getting super short on time. We're going to go ahead and push forward, maybe answer one more question or 2 more questions. That's it for our questions that people had already pre-submitted. So let's go through here real quick. And I've got one says, if you just have a FOID card, you would happen to have an intruder in your own home and there's a shooting in the homeowner to the intruder, how is that gun handler something? I don't understand that question. So let's go on.
I think I understand it.
Okay.
So it's going to be handled the same way as if you're out on the street or you have a CCW. If you have a valid FOID card and you are fearful for your life or your family's, so it's a justified shooting, it's going to be handled the same way as a CCW.
Okay, that's good to go. All right, and then one last one is if you're carrying and you get injured, all right, you get into an accident, something like that, and you're a CCW holder. What happens to their firearm, and what's going on?
I had this happen. I had a guy involved in a crash, and 2 of his firearms flew out of his car. He told us about it, what guns they were loaded. What we will do, the sheriff's office, basically we took the guns for safekeeping. We held on to them, unload them, make sure they're safe, and then we'll have someone come in from their family who has a FOID card and pick them up. If he goes to the hospital, or he or she goes to the hospital and we can't make it out, if he goes to the hospital and he gets released, then he's come down to whatever police department that has the firearms safekeeping. We'll sign a receipt, basically sign the guns right back over to him. Make sure everything's documented by the serial numbers and all that.
Right.
So that's what I did on that crash scene.
Okay.
Yeah. So basically, there's 2 options. We either ask them if they want us to release to somebody. We're going to verify if they have a FOID card, so we'll just release it on scene. If not, like Dan said, we'll just take the police department, hold it for safekeeping until they or somebody that they've said could come get it.
Perfect.
Released to.
Perfect. Good to go. All right, so that's kind of that's wrapped up, guys. We apologize for how quickly that time went. Everyone who's already submitted a question, we're going to make sure that I'm going to get their email address. I'm going to push that information and send them their way. We'll get some information, and I'll have some follow-up replies to your comments and things like that. Thank you for that. And I will make sure I will send a message to the lucky winner for your LEO blue Good Shepherd shirt, right? That guarantees no ticket in Tazewell County, right? So any closing thoughts, gentlemen? Thank you so much for joining us. I appreciate it. So you got any closing thoughts for anyone watching?
Just make sure you train. It's the number one thing.
Right.
Keep it basic and train.
For the most part, and I told Brian this when he called me and asked me to do this, I've had 0 issues with CCW carriers.
That's another one. Yeah. So I'm sorry. I lied. A lot of people. What is your opinion? Like, what is most police officers' opinion of CCW holders?
I think when it first was even talked about, we're like, but now that it's been great. I mean, like I said, we haven't had any issues with anybody. Well, I can say that I haven't.
I haven't had any issues either.
Right.
For the most part, with the process, like Dan said, guys, people don't want to lose their CCW once they have it. So they put the effort in. So like I said, it's been great.
Good stuff. Right. Any closing thoughts for everyone else as well, Steve?
I'd agree with Dan that we need to practice, be responsible in everything that you're doing. As that goes with practicing is be comfortable with what you're carrying, be situationally aware, and just know that the in specific, just for you guys actually coming out, just wanted to thank you as well, and just be mindful of police officers. You know, they're there to help us. They're not there to hurt us. And then I thought it was kind of interesting just to hear some of your guys' opinions on things and stuff like that. But I thought Brian made a good point, is police officers come to a scene, they don't know what's going on, just to be informative as well. I thought that was kind of interesting to hear your guys' opinion on that.
Definitely. So everybody in this room right now is human. We all make mistakes. We're all susceptible to the same psychological and physical deviations that we're going to have under stress. And the difference between or the definition of bravery is still pushing through even though you're afraid. Not one of us here would ever want to pick up a firearm and actually harm somebody. But the thing is, we've made that a decision to put ourselves there if that situation ever arises. But again, are you an asset or are you a liability with what you have and what you know? And if you're a liability, you have the power and the opportunity to change that. And you always want to make sure that you do that before the event happens, not afterwards, right? Guys, I appreciate it. Sincerely, thank you very much for showing up. Thanks, guys, for watching. I appreciate it. We'll make sure we post this, keep this going. Please keep sharing the information. Email some more questions and stuff like that in. Let us know what other Facebook Live events that you're wanting, all right? More things that you want to hear about. And, I mean, 35, 40 minutes just went like that. So I appreciate you guys watching. Stay safe and make sure you guys train, all right? Have a good night. Thanks, guys.